Why have we chosen depression? One of the greatest symptoms of depression is hopelessness.
For somebody that is operating within Ifa theology or within the Ifa framework of life, what does fulfillment look like?
When you are in a particular activity and that activity happens to be your passion and the expression of your gift and your talent in the form of a work environment, you experience flow. You just flow. And when you are flowing, you are happy, you are increasing your joy, you don't get tired, and you are happy. That kind of flow, that happiness is an element of fulfillment. That is, that person is fulfilling their gift and talent in a career environment. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, viewers, depending on wherever you are. Once again, you are welcome to today's discussion. Today, we are going to look at a very important aspect of transpersonal mental health that has to do with our indigenous Ifa theology, with specific ethnic location to the Yoruba cultural belief system. My name is Sir Professor Oluwafemi Esan. I'm the Professor of Transpersonal Psychology and Education, the Vice Chancellor of Everett London University. Once again, you are welcome to today's discussion. And as we said, today we'll be looking at the IFA's transpersonal psychology approach to depression. Why have we chosen depression? We found out that one of the most prominent, disturbing mental health issues that people are facing globally today is depression. In fact, the World Health Organization predicted that by 2030, that is in the next 5 years, the number one health condition in both developing world and developed world is going to be depression. So we now see that depression is on the increase today. And the question for us, especially for us in Africa, is that do we have our indigenous approach to dealing with depression based on our indigenous knowledge system with special focus on Ifa theology? And why have I chosen Ifa theology? Because due to my research, I discover that Ifa theology approach to depression has to do with the philosophy of predestination. Now, I was able to study comparatively the philosophy of predestination between the Ifa theology and the three Abrahamic religions, that is, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. But my focus today is on Ifa's theology, predestination philosophy, on the psychology of fulfillment. Why do we choose this? Because we understand fully well that one of the greatest symptoms of depression is hopelessness. Hopelessness. I repeat again, hopelessness. Now, to have a positive experience from hopelessness, is going to have a fulfillment experience. So to be fulfilled in life has to do with the question of predestination. And in my research, I found out that for us in Africa, in diaspora, and in our continent homeland, that our indigenous Ifa theology in the Yoruba culture has a very strong approach to the psychology of fulfillment. Going further, what is depression? Depression is a serious mood disorder causing persistent sadness, loss of interest, and other symptoms that disrupt daily life, lasting for weeks or months. not just a bad mood. It is a real illness with physical, emotional, and thinking changes that affect motivation, sleep appetite, and concentration. It is treatable with support and therapy. What are the common symptoms of depression? Feeling irritable, restlessness, anxiety, changes in sleep pattern, changes in eating habits. And then when it comes to the extreme symptoms of depression, the individual will start to have suicidal thought, suicide ideation, and this require serious help. When I look at the major characteristics of depression, and just for us to educate ourselves and to see whenever we have people around us that display this symptom and these characteristics, we should be proactive, to support them and to refer them to solutions, especially therapy, within what I call the indigenous transpersonal mental health approach, looking at IFA theology for this very therapy. So our focus today again is we are looking at IFA therapy in transpersonal mental health. So again, we have loss of interest, persistent low mood, cognitive changes. The individual begin to have difficulty in making decisions. They feel guilty and worthless, and they are preoccupied with negative thinking. These are the cognitive changes in an individual experiencing depression. Physical symptoms, fatigue, changes in sleep, insomnia or oversleeping, appetite or weight changes, aches and pain, and these have impact on their life. It interferes with their work, their school relationship, and daily functioning. And it's also a global issue. It is said that globally, around 330 million people experience depression, with roughly 4 to 5% of the world population affected. Though rates vary by demographics, more common in women and also different in location, with some regions and modern society showing higher prevalence. You see that modern society showing higher prevalence due to factors like urbanization, lifestyle changes. It is said that depression is a leading cause of disability, and numbers have been rising, with millions suffering from chronic depression and significant economic losses from loss of productivity, highlighting a major global health burden. So, as you say, it's a major global health burden. Now, let's look at our context in Africa. The depression rate in Africa vary, with estimates suggesting around 9% of the population suffer from depression, totaling over 29 million people. But specific country rates also differ. Like in Nigeria, about 3.9%. South Africa varies significantly in studies from 3.7% to over 38%. That is very worrisome. You see that in South Africa. Now, the continent of Africa faces a significant mental health burden, evidenced by the world's highest suicide rate. As you see, the world's highest suicide rate is in Africa. And that's why today's focus, we are looking at Africa, we are looking at indigenous religion therapy from IFA theology. How do we solve this problem using an indigenous therapeutic approach? Okay? Poverty, conflict, and stigma. We studied during COVID-19 pandemic showing even higher rate, around 48%. That is very, very disturbing, looking at Africa. And so we now see that Africa have the highest rate. Then, as we know that in this podcast, we always talk about African solutions to African problems. So in today's episode, I invite all of you to follow me carefully to look at our indigenous theology of IFA as a therapeutic approach to depression, laying emphasis on drawing from our indigenous resources, philosophy, therapy approach. Welcome to the IFA theology approach to depression within the field of transpersonal mental health. Therefore, let's take a look at the philosophical foundation of predestination by Ifa, and how does this apply to the therapeutical intervention when an individual is going through depression? Ifa's theology of predestination, theology regarding predestination, is a complex system centered on the belief that before birth, every person chooses their own destiny, which in Yoruba language we call Ayomo or Ipin.